Have you ever had a dream? You know, the kind of dream that takes you to Hollywood, 1 million subscribers on YouTube, the big screen, cinema, Netflix, you name it. Well, I did. And my upcoming guest for this interview, podcast, conversation did also.
My dream in music was, big famous band on the radio all the time, but I didn't want to tour a lot because I'm kind of a homebody, so that was a problem. I worked in CG for 20 years. I started in 1994.
That's when I was born.
See, there you go. I was already in my 30s.
And it was different. The movies that they created back then, they were worth watching. They were originals.
They were, but I wasn't even working on movies. I was working on TV, and I worked on that Mike Judge movie, Idiocracy. That was my first project. The second someone with ADHD is under a deadline, it's got to get done. All of a sudden, we're hyper focused. We're going to find a way to get it done. I was often the guy on a project, ooh, boom, this is how we're going to do it, right? Now that's great because then people are like, oh my God, Matt, you saved the project, but that's not fun time, being that stressed, hyper-focused on getting something done. And then, you just realize after a certain point, all these projects are the same. It's like, oh cool, I get to lay the sword. Can't wait.
Matt Rosenfeld was my teacher at the Noman School of Visual Effects when I was studying in Hollywood to become, in my eyes, I would have been a superstar, but behind the scenes, behind the screen, I wanted to make movies like James Cameron. Matt Rosenfeld was one of the pillars to get me there. He, in turn, never thought that he will become a visual effects teacher. All he wanted to be was a rock star.
My history did not start with visual effects. So I grew up in the Chicago area. I was a guitar player. I started when I was 14, freshman year. We were one of the local Chicago bands pursuing a big record deal. We did not get there. We got very close. And then, you turn a certain age, it starts with a 3, and you're like, all right, well, I don't want to be that guy. I'm still going to make it. I'm 38 years old and I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be a 16-year-old girl who's going to have a Matt Rosenfeld poster on my wall. That's just not what was in my future at that point. I tried to teach myself Maya with a book. No.
But why not pursuing building a band and an album? Because you told me that record companies were in touch with you. You did have the foot in.
Yes, but the realities of the music business, especially back then.
That very dream informed the rest of his life. And you know how it is with dreams. We idealize a very specific peak in that career. Maybe it's just the applause. Maybe it's seeing the follower count going up, 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 up. But what it takes to get there, the sacrifices it takes to be there one day, we don't really think about that. That's the dark 10 years to get there in the first place. You might not be able to pay rent or eat a proper meal for a long time. You sacrifice spending time with your friends. You sacrifice having friends. You sacrifice birthdays with family, forego all the fun that you can have for this one peak moment. Think of an athlete. They don't drink, they don't party, they don't have time for that. If they want to be an Olympic swimmer while you're partying, they are practicing in their pool all day, all night, in between classes. We know that most people don't achieve their dream. There's always something in the way, right? Either you almost grasp it and you get injured if you're an athlete. The money to pursue that dream and that vocation or education just simply runs out. You're about to have your big break, but you have to go home because your parents are not doing well and they need support. Or you simply give up. And most of us, we simply give up. It's not worth it to us. The normal everyday life is much more rewarding for most of us than that one peak dream, that one obsession that you strive to achieve. Matt has achieved his dream. He dangled his feet in it, and then he created the perfect variation of all the components that he actually loved about his dream. But I'm going to let him tell his story. In my case, I wanted to work on big movies. I had the opportunity to do so, and I did. And as I started to climb that ladder, everything was pulled like a rug out under me. And then I lost myself because I attached my entire self-worth on a title. Tiana artist, Tiana filmmaker, movie maker, Tiana digital matte painter, VFX artist. Especially because my family believed in me so much, they made insane sacrifices to send me to one of the most prestigious schools in this field. I felt like I let them down. Even though I did reach that dream, I couldn't sustain it. Partly because it wasn't for me, for my personality, partly because the circumstances were just against that achievement. And maybe I was just meant for something different. And I think this is where, personally, in my experience, what I call God, or other people call the universe, comes in. We can wish upon a star, we can pray, and we can say, God, please make this dream of mine come true. You have a destiny that is much bigger than the culmination of a million of sacrifices in one moment. And that's God's plan, in my opinion. This conversation with Matt, I think it helps people who feel lost, who think that if they can't achieve their dream, then it's not for them, then life's not for them. Then they failed in a way. Matt shows me that perfect dream life will find you and it will shape you. You will touch more people significantly with that dream that God gave you, that God made come true, than the one that you had dreamt up for yourself. I've never said the word dream so often, so I hope you can welcome Matt warmly. Matt is a guitar teacher in the Los Angeles area, and he also teaches guitar via Zoom. Wherever you are, Matt can help you out if learning the guitar is something that you would love to pursue. He is an incredible teacher. It doesn't matter what medium, this man knows how to package knowledge in a way that simply makes sense. And for anyone wondering about my series, when I was recording the I Can't Finish Anything series, I was very, very, very busy cramming as many projects as I could in a tight window, and then editing took so much time. I just wanted to take a little bit of a hiatus, relax, recover, spend time with my family. I hope I'm going to be able to balance things better, but balance is really the one thing that is the hardest to achieve and the hardest to maintain. All my projects are still in work in progress, but it simply takes more time. It just takes more time to finish what I start. Thank you for your patience, and I'll see you soon.
Uh-oh. Should I stop talking shit about everybody? How the hell is it going? How are you doing? I haven't seen
Oh
you
my
in
God, I
like
love your
2 years,
energy. I
right?
missed you so much. Like when I see you, I'm like, oh, getting flashbacks from no one but the good times, not the shitty ones.
I still talk about your bump map that you made for
The
that wing.
the plane.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit. That was awesome. I just tell random people on the street. Did I ever tell you about this bump map that Tiana made? It's incredible. Oh my
You
God.
really know how to talk to your students. You
I
really
do.
know how to make them feel special.
Exactly.
It feels like yesterday. You didn't change
Yeah.
at all.
Well, I hope so. I'm older.
I only saw you in a very, very dark classroom without any light in.
That is true.
And the impression that you gave me was that you were the most relaxed for sure teacher out of all of them. And you seemed our age, even though you weren't, in terms of
Old enough to be your parent?
you were cool.
Oh, well, thank you.
You were cool. You are probably older than my parents.
Probably. I could be your grand.
but 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 you are very, very, very young at heart and in your mind, and I'm really appreciative of that, especially in this like high stress environment that Noman was, where not only did we have like long classes, we had a lot of homework, so we went home or stayed in lab until really, really late at night, and you were able to absorb all that stress and negativity and sometimes even fatigue and make being in the classroom with you not only informative but enjoyable experience. And what I loved about you the most was that you came prepared. You had this PDF file that I call the Bible, and there
Yes.
was everything in there that you needed to know, written for 4-year-olds. Like any 4-year-old or person that doesn't know computers could understand. After reading this, Maya finally clicked for me. And before that, I had classes with another teacher, not gonna drop the names, but he was supposed to teach us Maya, and it didn't click for me until I sat in class with you.
Well, thank you. Well, the funny thing about those handouts, like I just started at Noman and I took over the Texture One class, and I was like, okay, I'm going to teach it differently than has been taught in the past. It's going to be far more demanding, but it's not fair. Like you can only retain so much over a 3-hour lecture with all this complicated stuff, right? So if I couldn't up the level of the class without providing some kind of reference for my students to go back on, because there's just no way. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to make this dummy proof, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I do think it helped because some other instructors, all the instructors were great there, but a lot of them were meeting all throughout the week, reteaching their class because it was too fast paced.
Hmm.
So I had far less of that because they had a reference to go to.
Mm-hmm.
It worked better for me, obviously, because I didn't have to reteach the class all the time. And it was good for the students because, I know that thing got passed around. I'm totally cool with that. And like, I swear to God, I don't do CG anymore, but I'd be on my own jobs. And like, if you're not doing a displacement hookup every day, you're going to forget some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be sitting there on my own handouts going through the steps to do it correctly. So it helped me too.
You ended up with Noma because you were in the visual effects industry for quite a while. And then you decided you wanted to teach guitar. How did that come about?
Okay, so my history did not start with visual effects. So I grew up in the Chicago area. I was a guitar player. I started when I was 14, freshman year. So I'm like, I want to graduate this school as the best guitar player in the school. It's a really big competitive high school. So I worked my butt off. I got in jazz band and I ended up going to USC for the studio guitar program. I'm sure you remember in my class, I was always drawing analogies to music. And there's just so many things in this world that have similarities. And one of the things, like in that, it's very similar to going to a big school like USC on the football team. So everybody on your team was the star in high school. And you're sitting on the bench because they're better than you. So I got there, and I was used to being the best guitar player in a 20-mile radius, and I got there, and there were only 8 of us. And I didn't realize how hard it was to get in that school. Somehow I snuck in, and they let me in. And I was looking around the room. I'm like, who are these adults? They're older, and they're like professional guitar players. So I'm like, okay, so I'm 7, better than this guy. But the distance between me and 6 was vast.
Okay.
For what we were there for the academics of jazz. But, not all those people had a great feel or they couldn't sound musical. They just knew the information. I graduated USC and then I worked in some advertising sales job for a year and I was going to go to law school. I don't know why. So I moved back to Chicago. Then I'm like, okay, law seems horrible. So then I basically pursued music for 10 years throughout all the 90s. So, I played in my own bands. I started writing my own songs, fronted bands, did studio work. But so I didn't have to get a real office job. I taught guitar. So I would teach like 35 students a week for 10 years.
What were the hours? 35
The hours were great. First of all, they're not all hours. But I don't know. I would wake up at 10. I'd go to the gym. I'd work on my songwriting. I didn't start teaching till 3. I'd teach like 3 to 8.
Okay, that's not bad.
No, it was great. It was like part-time hours, full-time money at the time. You can only get so good at songwriting if you're only doing it after work. So it allowed me a lot more time to pursue that. I was very serious about it. And then, what happens is you get to a certain age and your band gets really close. We were in the Chicago area in the 90s that was really exciting with Smashing Pumpkins, Urge Overkill, Veruca Salt, a lot of stuff going on. I started as a guitar player. That's what I focused on. Then I kind of realized, I'm like, wait, first of all, I don't care how good you are at guitar. Most bands aren't looking for guitar players. They're looking for drummers, singers, and bass players. Because most bands are started by guitar players. So I'm like, okay, and then if you're going to be in a band that plays original music, then you better really love whoever is writing the songs that you're playing. And I did not. The chances of finding some awesome project with a lot of potential that's going to go places, that is the kind of music you want to do, is very small. So I'm like, okay, I got to start writing songs. When you're in a certain creative field like music, guitar, drums, any instrument is a discipline you can learn in practice. Everybody thinks songwriting is just some gift from God. So John Lennon was 14 years old one day and like, Mom, check out this song, it's Day in the Life. It doesn't work like that. So any songwriter has influences that they kind of study. I'm like, okay, I'm going to teach myself how to write songs the way I taught myself how to play Stevie Ray Vaughan, by listening to it and figuring out what's going on. So I would sit there, huge John Lennon, Beatles fan at the time, and I would just sit there and chart out their songs. Like, hey, here it is. Here are the chords. Here are the melody notes they're singing. This is the lyrics. So this is what they mean. especially there's like a map. It's very positional instrument, meaning here's your template. These notes will fit in this key if you play them here. But that's like getting a bunch of words saying, hey, these words are going to work in a sentence. Just throw them in. So that's a big negative on how people learn guitar is they're just regurgitating info that they've been given. When you're embarking upon writing songs, you say, ooh, everybody does it like this. I'm going to do it differently. So you come up with kind of dumb ideas like, oh, I'll start the song with a bridge. A bridge is something that happens once, usually later in the song, to be unique. And then you realize that every great song written has the same one of three forms and just small variations. So you're like, oh, I probably don't need to spend a whole lot of time being creative on the arrangements because Elvis Costello wasn't. He was another one of my big influences. So that takes a lot of weight, then you're like more focused. So it's the same reason why cars don't have 7 wheels. I mean, sure, it might be better, but you don't need them. 4 works. What I did was I just kept on working on my own songs. Every night I was there. This was before phones, so I had a little tape deck, right? You're jamming along, you hit record, and you just keep those, and then you have a lyric book. And then one day I had a 4-track, and I demoed my first song that didn't suck. It was called Lovely Lisa. And I listened to it. I'm like, this isn't bad. I played for my friend. He's like, dude, this rocks. So we snuck into his dad's studio, recorded it with some friends of mine. When you're playing guitar in a band, you are shielded by whoever is fronting the band. You're just playing guitar. And people aren't judging you as a person. But when you are the songwriter, they are judging you as a person. They're judging your creation, right? So like when you were working for a movie and you did a matte painting and that your friend might, that's pretty lame. It's always like, well, that's what they wanted me to do, right? So with your own original art, like that painting behind you, that is what you wanted to do. So when people are saying, I don't like it, it sucks, or it's awesome, they are giving you feedback on you, something important to you. You know, recorded it, got it mixed somewhere else, and that friend of mine, his dad owned one of the biggest commercial production houses in the city, and his name was Ben Claff. That was my friend, and he brought it in the next day after we mixed it to play for some of the best studio guys in town, and the reaction was far beyond what I hoped it would have been. I was a huge John Lennon fan. They're like, yeah, it sounds like a modern John Lennon kind of thing. I was like, oh, cool. So then I just started writing more songs and demoing them, and I had a horrible voice. Like, I am not a natural singer. I'm a natural guitar player, but just singing a note on pitch was difficult for me. So I worked on my voice a lot and then just kept on demoing stuff. And then I finally got people interested in playing with me. And the goal was we were going to find a singer. And I was singing temporarily. And then these guys are just like, dude, we're booking a gig and you're going to sing. So that's what happened. So I fronted my own band for several years. And that was a lot of fun. But it started like in high school and that, and then, you know, you get to a certain point, we had record labels interested and all that kind of stuff. We worked with a really big producer from a very big band that sold millions and millions of albums. I was always a little concerned that he might not be the best musical fit, but sometimes you're like, oh, we got to go with the big name because you say we're working with this person, that gets more people in it. So we went and recorded with them, and it just didn't sound as good as the stuff that we had done on our own. So then we went and re-recorded everything. And, you know, we were one of the local Chicago bands pursuing a big record deal. We did not get there. We got very close. And then, you know, you turn a certain age, it starts with a 3, and you're like, all right, well, I don't want to be that guy. Like, I'm still going to make it. I'm 38 years old, and I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be a 16-year-old girl's going to have a Matt Rosenfeld poster on my wall. That's just not what was in my future at that point. So
I'm
then,
trying to imagine this. This is really funny.
well, it's just funny because, it's like I remember like back then when I was teaching, like I enjoyed it. It was a good job, but it wasn't really, I'd never said, oh God, I want to practice guitar my whole life so I can teach kids how to play guitar. That wasn't my goal, but it's an option. It was great. And I remember I was in a lesson with this kid who was like 12 years old. And this was when I was going to people's houses. And he was just so into, he's like, so have you always wanted to be a teacher? I'm like, yeah, dude, totally. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, like, see that Kurt Cobain poster? I had guitar teachers on my wall. And he's like, really? I'm like, no. But now I do it because I just actually love doing it. I love helping people out. I'm too old to be looking to be a rock star. But, so what I did after that, and I went back to some art school in Chicago and got good enough to get hired in multimedia design by a marketing agency that was a really cool place. And that led to right around 9/11. I was killing it at that job. It was a lot of fun. Everyone got laid off, of course. And then I was in Chicago, and I had been playing around with, like, I think it was Lightwave, and just getting nowhere because back then there was no YouTube to get. It was just like a book, and good luck figuring out CG on your own. So then I'm like, okay, I'm moving back to LA because just had a lot of friends, and I came out to visit in February, and I'm like, God, it's 80 degrees, and it's miserable in Chicago, and there's no work, and fuck it, I'm moving back. So I sold my condo, moved back here with like literally no plan of what I was gonna take the world over by storm. I was doing CD-ROM technology. Do you remember that?
I know what
It
a CD is, but what is
Right.
CD-ROM technology?
It's like a CD-ROM you put in your computer and it tells you about your company. It was just like it was really big for about a year and a half, 2 years, and then that got replaced. So I was I was like in LA, like, well, that's not
But
gonna work.
wait, let me interrupt you. So the
Yeah.
only reason why you didn't end up pursuing guitar like full-time professionally was because you couldn't see yourself on a poster in a 15-year-old girl's bedroom? Like this is sticking out
No,
to me like a sore thumb.
it was a 12-year-old boy's bedroom who asked me basically if my lifelong aspirations were to be teaching guitar.
Yeah.
Like, no, of course not. That's like asking an aspiring actor, have you always wanted to be a waiter? No.
But why not continuing pursuing
I,
building a band and an album? Because you told me that record companies were in touch with you.
oh
Did
yeah,
have the
well,
foot in.
yes, but the realities of the music business, especially back then, you get to a certain age where it's like kind of,
How
you know,
old were you at the time?
I think I had just turned 33.
Right.
But then you start worrying, like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't want to teach guitar for the rest of my life. I need to make more money. I mean, it was a great living for what my expenses were at the time, but you start seeing your friends getting higher and higher up in companies, and you're just, oh, I got a gig. I mean, that's wonderful. That's great. It was fun and everything, but at one point, you do have to. I
Looking
do.
back, what do you think did you do, let's say, wrong or not enough, or wrong place, wrong time, that didn't get you more gigs?
Well, it wasn't gigs. There's a couple things. Okay, so my band, like the songs I wrote, they were very radio friendly. Like everyone listening to them, like, wow, these are hits, right? One is when you're a local Chicago band and a record label is coming out to check you out, they don't care that you blew the other local Chicago band off the stage. They're not comparing you to them. They're comparing you to Pearl Jam at the time or Kurt Cobain. They don't just want the next Kurt Cobain. They hopefully want somebody who's bigger and better. And there's just certain realities that, like, I do not look like a rock star and never look like a rock star. Like, I'm a decent looking guy at like a bar mitzvah or like a barbecue. But there is a certain kind of look that record companies like to sign. And at one point I was like, I always kind of knew that. And everyone liked the stuff, but at one point, I basically fired myself a singer and got this really cute younger girl to front our band.
Wait. Sorry for all the interruptions,
No
but
worries.
I am aware of bands that were aware of their either not so specific looks or not so stand out looks. They worked with that. They either, like, I think Slipknot and Kiss, they either had masks or makeup, or they wore funny outfits, like Chappell Rowan. She dyed her hair red and put on clown face all the time, and that's how she became famous. Sia called herself ugly, so she hid behind a wig. There would have been ways to market you.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, it's that first of all, I didn't like that kind of attention. I didn't like being judged that way, and yes, those people were successful, but you have to understand. So I'll take the CG industry as a comparison, right? You go to Nome and you work really hard. About like at least 80% of them are going to go on to a paying job, right? Most bands that the percentage that go on to a record deal, and then the record deal is just the beginning, right? All that means in the music industry is the record company loans you a bunch of money, which you owe them back, and then you have to sell a lot of albums. The people that are successful is such an incredibly tiny percent. So when we see these people, we're like, yeah, they did that. But keep in mind that there are a lot of people that had all the other stuff and did not make it.
Mm.
So at that point, I was like, well, do I keep on doing this? And at one point, it's a
Did you
younger.
sign? Did you sign with a record
No,
label?
we signed a production deal with a big producer, and we had a big lawyer who was Nirvana's lawyer marketing us. But the tape we produced with that producer, and I love him to death. He was a great dude. I loved every moment it recorded. It didn't sound as good as the stuff we recorded on our own. It was just not a good match. So any band is like making a bowl of chili, right? That band, it was like power pop music. It's on Matt Rosenfeld on Spotify if you want to check it out.
Okay.
You can be my third monthly listener. It was like basically really melodic power pop melodies that were very aggressively played. The band was rushing, the vocals were dragging. And then to offset some of that bubblegum, because if you just play bubblegum rock, it's going to sound kind of a little hokey. It was a lot of dissonance involved. So that was our bowl of chili. That was the ingredients. And then when we worked with this guy, he had a different background. It was all about getting the perfect take. So a lot of times you can do a one-take guitar solo that got all the attitude and mojo, but you might have made a little goof, which most people would say, ooh, that sounds like charm. It was like, let's try it again. Let's try it again. I was a nervous wreck for vocals because I was super, maybe overconfident with guitar, but vocals, I was super lacking in confidence. And that didn't work out. And like, you're excited about a project. I was in LA for 3 weeks and I came home. Our band was talking to a manager at the time and we had our own stuff. We re-recorded the songs with him that we did originally on our own. And the manager, he called me. He's like, dude, you can't shop this. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I can't get this signed. I can get your stuff that you recorded signed. And I'm like, I didn't believe him. I'm like, this is a huge producer. And then, you get home, and I went home and smoked a joint and listened. And I'm like, oh my God, he's right. I have trouble listening to it this very day. So then we went and re-recorded everything with our guy, and it sounded a lot better. But the thing is, when a record company's not dumb, you hear the same songs recorded differently with a different name, possibly. That first impression was already over. And then the thing is, that time that we spent re-recording every time was the time that the music industry changed. And it was like all about bands like us. And if we would have just probably shopped our original tape that was rough, but it sounded great, we possibly could have I'm pretty convinced we would have gotten signed because our songs were very marketable. But in that period of time, it was like the record companies, ooh, we're not interested in this music anymore. We're interested in electronica. That's when Prodigy came out. So when we were ready to shop our stuff and we had a huge lawyer doing it, record companies are still like, okay, like, we're not looking for that anymore. And at that point, you're like, 33. It's like, God, like getting a band up and running, that could take 3 to 5 years. I'm like, don't want to be 40 one day, slugging it out in clubs, not making much money, still chasing the dream, right? So that's when I came back to LA. And
What's your dream? Like, what did it look like if you had to put it
well,
in a scene?
it's funny because my dream in music was, big famous band and on the radio all the time, but I didn't want to tour a lot because I'm kind of a homebody, so that was a problem. I like saw myself as some influential artist moving forward, but everybody feels that way, right? But unlike, with CG, if you went to Noman and you knew that only half a percentage of people were going to be working CG artists, would you go to Noman? Probably
No,
not.
no,
Right.
not for the money it costs to get educated
Right.
there.
So when you're spending your time and you're turning down other opportunities that would make you money, that's basically spending money. And, at one point you got to think about your life moving forward. Do I want to be, just like that guy, right? Because like when you get older and older, like I was still young, I was still in my early 30s, but I saw some older dudes, and then you're like the older dude hanging around young people. You're in a different place in life, right? All my friends were already starting to get married, have kids, and felt I was missing out on that a little bit, but I wasn't ready to get married or even be in that kind of relationship. And I did wait much longer in my life to do that. But, I wanted to make more money, and there are other creative fields. So I went into that advertising, and then I came out here and I'd been playing around with the light wave, and I tried to teach myself Maya with a book.
How did you decide on VFX? What was the thing that
Well, it's like my loves growing up were when I was a little kid, I was always building models and painting them, and I was really into that kind of stuff.
so you were a multidisciplinary artist already growing up. It was not just a guitar.
No, it started with drawing. I'm like my son, just full on ADHD. So, like, no concentration. And all the way till third grade, anything I drew was just no thought behind it. And then something clicked, and I kind of got known as like the best drawer in my class. And that lasted through about like all the way through fourth, probably like seventh grade. That was my thing. I was the artist. But I'd always been a huge music fan. Right around seventh grade, I was hanging out with some friends, and like that's the age where you start getting defined by who you listen to, right? I was in the basement of my friend Tom with some guys hanging out. He put on the Cars album that just came out, and I was listening. I'm like, that was like early new age. I'm like, this is a pretty cool tune. And then somehow I heard the Who song "You Better You Bet" on the radio. It was like 1980 something, early 80s. I just really love that song. I was hanging out with another neighbor, this kid, and I was in his room, and kind of started bragging that I was a Who fan because it made me cool. And he's like, "That's not the Who, dude. This is." And then he played me their earlier stuff. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's pretty good. So I got super into the Who. My mom had been bugging me to play guitar since I was maybe 7 years old. And I always had like a wonderful excuse. One of them was that I was too old. My mom kind of walked in on me because she didn't knock. I was playing air guitar to Pinball Wizard with a tennis racket. And she's like, why don't you just freaking learn how to do the real thing? I'm like, okay. So my neighbor across the street, David, he'd been just started guitar lessons with this guy in our town, Mr. Elliott. He was like 65 years old. He was a classical guitar teacher. So I signed up with him.
And you learned the proper way, right? You didn't just learn 4 basic chords, you learned the music theory.
Well, the classical guitar, there's very little theory involved. It's more like reading music.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I did because I wouldn't have gotten into USC. Like, you're not getting into USC if you can't read music, right?
Mm.
So I did that for like maybe 8 months, but like the songs he was teaching me, according to Mr. Elliott, and he was a wonderful guy. The only band worth learning is the Beatles, and the best song is When I'm 64 in Yellow Submarine. And I'm like, what about Day in the Life or like Strawberry Field? No. So I got a Who book, and I started learning all these songs because once you can read a chord diagram, you can start teaching yourself. I did that, and then I'm like, I got to get more serious about electric, right? Classical guitar, if you study seriously and that's your thing, you could be a solo classical guitar player playing some small string orchestra with a guitar or weddings. And it's just not what I wanted to do. So I got this rock teacher. His name was Mike Badio. 72. He's like this super fast shredder, but he started teaching me rock, and then the way it worked.
What is he famous for now? Is he famous for teaching or famous for his own music?
He is famous for his own music. He is an extremely fast player. Doesn't play very musically, but he's extremely fast. He's pretty famous still. He was not famous when I took from him, but like the songs he writes are pretty terrible because being a good musician is not just playing fast. So, I took from him and then he moved out of town. I learned a lot from him. One of the most important things I learned was the way it worked in my high school. There were a lot of bands. Everybody had the same gear and everybody had a guitar teacher. It was either this guy Mike or this other guy or maybe a couple other people. And we were all in bands and we wanted to play songs. But back then there was no YouTube. There was no tab. If you wanted to learn a song, you had to buy a book, hope it was right. There weren't many books and they were never right. Or you got a guitar teacher to figure it out and write it out for you, or you learned how to figure it out on your own. So we would come in every week, hey, I want to learn Message in a Bottle. He would listen to it and write it out. That's what me and all my friends did. And
it's so interesting how prevalent illiteracy in the music world is. Even
well,
these days, when you look at the YouTube videos, they don't teach you, they teach you the moves. They teach you what key to press or what string to play, where to put your finger. But it rarely comes with the theory of how to read sheet music.
well, there's reading music, which is an important skill for some things, but just knowing, see, that's the whole thing is like, I'm going to reverse things on you because I was always comparing visual effects to music. But when you look at music compared to visual effects or visual art, it's like, ooh, here's the colors you use. It's paint by numbers. You're just getting the notes when you play them, but you're not learning how to play the notes, how to make them sound good, how to sound cool when you're playing, how to have a sense of rhythm, right? That's just the notes, right? So there are many more aspects to music. So in Western music, a lot of it's focused on the notes. It's like I went to USC and it was just notes. Here are the notes. These are the notes you can use. Here's where you play all the notes, blah, blah. Nobody talked about tone or groove or rhythm or dynamics or all the things that make a good piece of music. In the same way that art, just having colors that fit is not the end of the story. That's part of it. But if you're just a lot of music is like, here's where you put your fingers. You will technically be playing this song. And the guy demoing it usually sounds good, but he's not teaching you all the little details you need to know to make it sound like that. And understanding those details never usually comes from having somebody show you. Those are skills that musicians develop on their own over 10 years. Like in my teaching now, I teach that from the outset because it's a difficult thing to teach, but it's a valuable thing to teach. Yes, a lot of these things on YouTube right now are very like, here's where you put your fingers, this is what you do, blah, 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 but it's too difficult to teach exactly. A lot of music is feeling, right? So visual art is feeling too, but you're not going to get anything across to somebody with feelings. It still has to look like something visually. Like in music, you just play a beat and if people like it, that's it. That's all you need, right? So while I was doing that, I was the only one of these kids going. Like, one time I'm like, Mike, how do you just listen to it and know how to play it? And he gave me the worst answer, but it was the best answer at the same time. He's like, I don't know, man. You just kind of do it. And I'm like, okay. So that night I went home and I turned on a Police album. There was a song called Do 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 Da 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 Da. And I turned it on. I listened to it. I'm like, okay, well, maybe he's playing a D. No, maybe he's playing it. So I got that first chord by ear. And then I was able to learn that song by ear. I learned a basic version. I didn't get all the embellishments. When I brought it into Mike the next week, he's like, that's awesome. You missed this. This is what's really going on. But at that point, I could listen to something and play it without somebody showing me how. So at that point, like the next thing I did was I learned a solo on my own. Every solo I got before that, either Mike read out for me or was in some guitar magazine, like Stairway to Heaven solo, which every guitar player learns.
Mm-hmm.
It was just written out, and that's great because you can play it. But if it wasn't written out, I couldn't play it. So the next thing I did was I learned a car solo just what I needed by ear. And at that point, I was no longer reliant on a teacher to learn songs that I could play in my band. I could learn songs on my own. But that's like a different level of musicianship. Most kids that play just haven't taught over 10,000 hours doing that, like that. Most are cool, and everyone's got different goals, but like most are kind of happy, like, here, he's going to show me, right? The ones that take the next step, try to figure it out on their own, are the ones that get better, right? So if you want to eventually be like some kind of professional, some highly regarded musician, you have to have that skill. And I just kind of forced myself to do it. But when you're listening to songs like that, a lot of people listen to music as a fan, right? Oh, I like the beat, cool song. But I always tell my guitar student, don't listen like a fan, listen like a guitar player. Are there guitars? Yes. How many do you hear? What is the feel? What is the tone? What is the sound? When I was doing visual effects, I would make a lot of musical comparisons. I actually teach my guitar students blind contour drawing.
Blind contour drawing.
Have you ever done that? You must have. It's basically you look at your hand and you don't look at what you're drawing.
Ah, yeah.
It was called blind contour when it was taught to me. But what that's doing is it's teaching you to actually look and see what's really there, not what you think is there.
Mm-hmm.
And music
That's the first thing that I try to teach the people that I teach how to draw, that you forget about the fact that you're drawing an eye, you're drawing a shape.
You're drawing a shape and it's got certain proportions. I don't have any scientific proof, but you see somebody walking towards you on the street, right? You're not bringing in fine little details. You're like tall, short, male, female, big, small, you make those, and then your brain fills in all the details. So that's how people often draw. That's why a hand usually looks like a turkey hand, but it's also why people don't really sound good when they play, because they're not listening to stuff in the blind contour drawing way. So I literally sit there with my students, I show them how to look at what's really there, and then let's listen to what's really there. Because if you're going to like figure out some, I don't know, whatever famous artist solo, there's all these different places on the neck to play it. You got to really understand. Your brain is going to say, oh, it goes like this, but it might be a little bit different. So just being able to listen intelligently builds that vocabulary, and it keeps you thinking about it. So when you're in a car listening like that, not just rocking out, you're actually practicing, and that makes you a better musician. So there's many different ways that different creative fields intersect, I think.
I agree. Do
Yeah,
you when your students come to you and you have this exercise with them, do they bring their own songs that they want to learn?
sometimes they do. The funny thing is most students have no idea what they want to play, right? So I, just having done this long enough and taught enough people, there's certain things that are fundamental skills in playing guitar which aren't really taught. The first is strumming, how to strum and sound coordinated. And most teachers will try to teach it, but it's hard to teach somebody who doesn't. The way rhythm works with strumming guitar is that you're either born understanding it or you're not.
Like rhythm.
Well, yeah. Can I pull out a guitar really quick?
Please.
Okay, so this is, I gotta lower this a little bit. Sorry, I got like a cape on. I was teaching Wonderwall earlier.
Are you kidding?
No, it's a great song for strumming. Okay, so good guitar strumming, I always use the song Night Moves by Bob Seger, which is this.
Okay.
So I asked Mike how to play that, and he said, oh, here's how you do that little mute, but he never had to teach me the downs and ups, when to do them. I just knew. To me, it was well, duh, this is how you do it. It's obvious, but the people that think that way, kind of like when you look at something and draw it, you are far more in tune with it than the average Joe. So you got that, right? But most people don't understand it. So most people play it, they don't understand that it's like a rhythm and you got to place it, and it ends up, what they do is they stop the motor. So a good strum is just starting and not stopping. So what they do is, versus, so I spend a lot of time with my students making sure they understand that, because if you don't understand that and you can't do it, you can only be so good.
This reminds me of, in like the visual artistry, what I struggled with the most was soft and hard edges. And this, what you're doing right now, is soft and hard edges with your strumming. Like some strums you let to like echo, and the others you keep sharp and you hold them back. So the echo for me would be the soft edges. The holding it back would be the sharp edges. It makes it more yummy somehow. It makes it more interesting, but you have to have a feeling for it. I could never learn it. There's like with color theory, there is a formula for it. But for hard and soft edges, there's just very, very few rules and they don't always apply. So you really have to go by intuition. How do you feel about the strumming technique?
How do I feel? Well, yeah, strumming is like, it's funny because I'm always talking to my students. I'm like, what is one trait that all good guitar players have? And it's always like, well, they know all the notes, they do this. I'm like, no, it's instinct. It's like knowing what to do instinctually. Now
Hmm.
you can develop instinct, but some people are born with more instincts than others. So I was always, I have ADHD, right? So when I had was diagnosed, it's way different than now. Now everybody has it; they're clinically diagnosed, and it's a thing. It was just like, oh, Matt can't pay attention in class. We're gonna put him on Ritalin. Oh, now he's a zombie. Well, we're gonna send him to this guy, and and then you get a little older, you start getting your shit together, and then it's like, oh, it's gone. But I still had it. That's why I got through college by cramming the night before every test. But it also affects how you learn something, a discipline like guitar, right? So a lot of guitar, especially the jazz based stuff at USC, was like there's a lot of academics, there's a lot of math involved. Music theory is basically math in many ways, which I freaking hate. I would force myself to do it, but I would only get so far. So also I was not a fan of jazz. It's hard to get great. It's something you're not into. But I would also sit there because I had been at USC, like I came out to USC from Chicago. I knew one person. And I was in a dorm hall and, I had my guitar. I was a guitar major. And one night I was like playing pretty loud. And I heard a loud knock at the door. I'm like, oh shit, I'm busted. I opened the door and it's like literally the most quintessential Newport Beach water polo player dude you can imagine. His name was Trevor. Just no shirt, rip, crew cut, holding a brewski. He's like, dude, that sounds badass. Come party with us. So like I went down the hall with them and these guys, they only listen to early Van Halen, like on a loop. And
What does Van Halen sound like? I don't know who that is.
you've never heard Van Halen? Come on.
Give
Really?
me your guitar. I want to hear some.
Well, it doesn't sound good, They had like, you really got me, or
Is this
like,
like country? It gives me country vibes.
no, it's hard rock. It's like Jump. Do you ever hear Jump or Panama?
No.
Okay,
Maybe I
well,
know it by the music.
okay, well, it was a hard rock band, and Eddie Van Halen was like the preeminent guitar player at the time. And everybody was always drawn to his leads, but I was really drawn to his rhythm playing. And I would just sit there in their room listening to it over and over again. So what kind of turned me on, like sitting there doing the simple things that I knew where he was putting his fingers and what he was playing, but I didn't sound like him, and figuring out why he sounded the way he did. And it's all a bunch of like pick angle, intensity, all this kind of stuff. What turned me on was like, ooh, I want my guitar to sound great. If I hit a G chord, you can make a G chord sound okay or bad or great. So I always wanted to sound great. And that is the awareness that a lot of other players don't develop, right? So I was studying, I had an awesome teacher, this guy Richard Smith at USC, and I changed my major. I was no longer a music major, but I still studied, and he would kind of, he would tell me, he's like, you sound way more legit than a lot of the music majors. Because when you're at a school for like being fluent at guitar, that's one thing. You're usually demonstrating your academic knowledge that you know the notes and you can play them, you can do this and this, but like when it comes time to get into gig, like some artist is looking for a guitar player, they're not like, oh, can you play the pentatonic? No, I'm going to need to see the sixth mode of the harmonic minor scale at the eighth fret. That just doesn't come up because that's not needed. you're playing with this. Oh, can you do an R&B? Can you sound like an R&B player doing R&B, not
Mm,
a music major doing the
mm,
R&B thing? And there's a big difference between that
mm.
because when you are listening to like blues players, right? They have a certain touch and a certain feel that makes it sound legit. So like my focus was always to sound legit.
This makes me think that whenever these egghead academics see something that they're into, like for example, any form of artistry, they always try to rip it apart to make it make sense to them, and it always comes out rigid. I think that those are the people who are just terribly in bed too. It's if you can't be a sexual creature, you cannot make good art. You're gonna be a stick in bed.
There is,
Passion goes everywhere. It's correlated.
yeah, and there's a certain feral element to being a good artist that it's just, yeah, this is this is what I feel, right?
You
This is what
cannot
happened.
you cannot mathematize passion with the formulas that we have right now. It's not possible. It's
No,
not possible.
you
And
have to,
music is one of these passions. I understand what you mean when you say you play the note and you get the note. Like remember MIDI, like MIDI, the
yeah.
karaoke tunes? Like they did play the notes according to how it was written in the sheet music, but it was missing the soul. You could feel it. It sounded robotic. It sounded like
Well, yeah, it's like you can have eighth notes, da 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 da, but you can play them
Mhm.
with different feel. So,
Yes, 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 yes.
so like, when people are strumming, it's like playing drums. So that's a hi-hat, right? Low string, kick, high snare. So you can go, so that was a very simple fingering. Like I'm
But
not going,
that's sexy. That is sexy. And you played like one chord and a little bit you added a little bit of a thing to it.
yeah, that's all the mojo that like
No, 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 like on the fret, you played one chord.
that, right?
Yeah, but everything that you did with your right hand was actually the music. And
Well,
so
yeah,
so
yes, because most guitar is focused exclusively on the left hand.
yeah,
People say, "Oh, there's no value unless," and that's I teach beginners completely differently than most because most beginners it's like, "Oh, here's a G7 and here's a C." These are like three finger chords with big reaches, and you're
yeah,
just starting. And a lot of people quit because it's too hard. Guitars
yeah.
on piano doesn't have a hump. You can press a note on a piano, anyone can do it.
Mm,
Guitar, you got to do all these things right just to get it to work.
mm,
And it's like, ooh, we're going to learn some more chords. So it ends up, if when the students, if they, assuming they don't quit and they stick with it, they're usually pretty good at their left hand, but then they're horrible with their right because they
yeah.
don't work on it. So I know that if I play three chords, like you just A G D. That's just played in a boring way. I could play it like this, like I'm trying to kill the guitar.
Yep.
Those three chords sound bad. Or if I just picked it up and went like, like, and just did that, would you think I was good?
Yeah, I would
Right.
definitely think you were good by the last one.
Right, but I just played two chords. Why is that? Because I'm communicating rhythm, right?
Yes, and you're doing it with a confidence. Like it's like you're actually having a conversation through your guitar. It's really cool.
Well, yeah, because that's what moves people. The thing is, and it's funny, I tell all my students right now is, like when you're playing in the city and you start getting a name as a guitar players will come check you out and you can always find them because there's always two of them and they get close enough to the stage to see your gear but not close enough to look like they're into it and they're usually like this, they're arms crossed, there's two of them, they're always like watching you go like this and I go and that, right? So guitar players are judging you on guitar specific things. Ooh, is he using his fourth finger? That's what's important to them. But nobody filled a room with that. Nobody bought an album because of somebody's finger technique and all that kind of shit or the gear they used. People relate to music in a very primal way. You hear
Mm-hmm.
it, you feel it, and you
Mm-hmm.
move or you don't move. So I always tell, my students, play for the normal person. Don't play for guitar players. You're never going to impress them. They have different sets of priorities, and it's just a losing cause. Like, you want to get your average person moving. So I know if I'm sitting around a campfire and I'm playing a song, I'm playing it with good rhythm, people are feeling it. And it's just like, whether it's visual art or, you know, audio art, it's like you got to get that feel across, right? So I will look at, there's a lot of feel in your painting. I see a lot of emotion in it. You're not just, oh, I'm doing this thing here. You're not just taking things you've been taught. You're taking things that you've learned and making your own thing out of it. But that's what good artists do, It's like, you listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan. He was influenced by Jimi Hendrix, obviously, but he's not a Jimi Hendrix clone. So a lot of guitar players, they like, oh, I want to sound exactly like this guy. Or I want to do this, but like, you have to understand, you listen deeply enough and practice enough to understand the spirit of it. But if you just continue to do that, you are going to be a Jimi Hendrix clone. And some people want that. There could be worse things, but you're not doing your own thing. You're just
I think, yeah, most people are afraid to tell their own story. What we forget about art is it's not the product itself, it's the intention behind the artist. Why would you go through that? Like, as any musician or artist, we do have the opportunity to just go outside and play with our friends, like pick up a ball or go to a bar and I don't know, get drunk or something. Why do we choose to spend nights alone by ourselves, even though we could spend it with family and friends, to create something that nobody probably will pay attention to? It's because we have something inside that we need to communicate, and we don't know how to say it with words, and we don't know who to communicate it to, and we just want it to exist. We want to put a mark in our own language into the outside world, just to validate whatever experience caused us to want to create in the first place. So yes, if you pick up a Jimi Hendrix song, all you're trying to do is retrace the steps that he went through in his life and try to understand his story through his language. You're becoming more or less a very creative art historian, if anything, like a musical art historian, but you're not becoming an artist.
well, yeah. This whole thing is, you mentioned telling your story, right? Sometimes you don't know what your story is, but like, all the practice we do to get good, it can help you learn what your story. So for example, when I first started writing lyrics, I was always under the assumption that they had to make sense when you read them. There had to be a very clear story and all that. And, you listen to Eleanor Rigby, right? There's a very clear story. You know
I
exactly.
don't know. I don't know who it
My
is.
God, I gotta get you some songs to listen to. Eleanor Rigby. Da, 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 da,
You
da.
have to talk to me in basic bitch terms. Like, I know everything after the 2000s, not before. Like,
Um,
anything that is on the radio after the 2000s, that's when we can talk.
okay. Well, sometimes you have a song that makes sense. Like, when you read it, you know exactly what it's about. And then sometimes you have songs that aren't super clear what it means, right?
I love to put two things as an example. For example, Castle on the Hill of Ed Sheeran, that's a story. Then we would have um, Jealousy, turning sense into the sea. What's that song again?
I don't remember, but
You know the song. It, to me, like, half of it doesn't make any sense, but it's so catchy and it does kind of paint a scene, but it has many like intelligence holes. Like, you can tell that a lot of that song is either like a private joke or like only the people who
well,
were there
here's
will
here's the
understand it.
deal. Yes, okay, so one thing I learned is, like, the actual lyrics don't always matter. It's how the words sound. And
Hmm.
how, because, like, how many times have you sang a song and you're like, oh, I didn't even know they were singing that? You're singing syllables, right?
Hmm.
So, like, that's what people are reacting to. Some people listen for the words. But the funny thing is, like, just because, like, I have ADHD, right? So for me to maintain that kind of focus from the beginning to the end, where everything's buttoned up and makes sense, that's not my thing. Because I'll be like, oh, it's about this, but ooh, now it's about this. Now it's about this, right? I can't change the way my mind works. So I'm never going to write a song that when you type it out on a page, like, oh, that sounds like a book. It makes sense. No, but the thing is, what I learned is it doesn't really frickin' matter. If you have a good first line that has words that sound cool and you got a good chorus, it doesn't always matter what the words are. I always felt kind of like I was falling short in that part of things. And one of the things is that I worried, I was like, God, what if I get big? And they're like, yeah, what's this song about? I'm like, I don't know. What day is it? You know, I had songs, like I wrote this one song called Fallen, that it was like kind of one of the most emotional songs I wrote. I had this woman sing it, and it was like kind of like my mom was dying of lung cancer, and I felt like I was just constantly falling. But you would never know by listening to the song because it was all metaphorical. But those were my feelings. But you know,
But
but
that's
like
the story. Like when you said not everyone knows what their story is. It's not really about a 3 arc or 5 arc allegory. It's about you experience something and it sits with you. And maybe there's a scene that you play over and over in your head that doesn't let you go, something, a moment that you regret, a misstep that you took that got you somewhere where you didn't want to be, or the wrong companionship that you chose, and how much they mistreated you, and how they made you feel. Like all of these things, you don't have to take it as a macro thing. You can make a whole album about a whole relationship, but each of the songs can be a different feeling or a different stage of grief, or
right,
same with painters. Like I did a whole series about I call it Skin Deep, and just the theme was what happens to the skin. Like skin can melt, it can break, like all these like abstract things. It's like a song, you could turn the images into words that then you make them rhyme and it can become a song. But at the end of the day, the same thing happens for every artist. It's just a different way to let it out and a different structure. And you can even tell, like when I listen to a Ed Sheeran versus a Taylor Swift, they have their very distinct styles and rhythm, and even like the chord progressions that they like to
yeah,
use and the keys that they sing in. When these artists sell their songs, and let's say Ed Sheeran writes a song and he sells it to a Justin Bieber, the moment I heard "Love Yourself," I was like, that's not Justin Bieber, that's Ed Sheeran who wrote it. I could tell by how clever the writing was, how the rhythm was, and then I found out, yeah, he sold the song to him, and I find that very, very interesting.
well, yeah. And the funny thing is like at one point I kind of said, you know what? As long as some things are clear, it doesn't matter. As long as it sounds cool.
Yeah.
So it was funny because like many years later, I was listening to this podcast called Song Exploder, and they were talking to Rivers Cuomo from Weezer, like, "Hey, how'd you rate this one song?" And he's like, anyone who knows of him or knows him, he's a pretty eccentric dude, right? So he's like, "Oh, I have this Spotify playlist of Motown songs, and I like this one, so I'm going to write my own version with it." So he basically stole the chords, which you can do. There's only so many chords. And then he started coming up with a melody, just vocally. Like that's the actual songwriting part of it. But then for lyrics, he's insane. He has a spreadsheet of 50,000 lines of lyrics that he has written over the years that are sortable by syllable length, all this kind of stuff. Pulls up what he needs and he starts plugging it in.
Wait,
And
is that like a digital list?
yeah, it's like an Excel spreadsheet. But some people like write little lines in notebooks of stuff they don't want to forget. He keeps it in a spreadsheet
Okay.
to use. So once you have a melody of the song, you just gotta find words that have the syllables that are correct to fit that melody, right? So if you're holding a note, it would never be like a t, right? It'd have to be a vowel. And so he just started taking these, popping them in, and the song was done. And then they said, "Hey, what are your lyrics about?" And he had a very good answer that I wish I would have known if I ever had this interview that never happened. It's like he's like, "Well, I think if I understand my own lyrics, I failed." Because he's so brilliant that it has to be beyond even him, that they're that deep. But it's another way of saying they really don't mean that much. What do they mean to you? So there's
I
different
hate
ways.
these kind of artists. They piss me off.
Why?
Because you're basically telling me that you're too scared to you're not too scared to put your feelings out there, but you're too scared to actually discuss them, and you leave it up to everyone else to open up in front of you, like your little lambs that came for slaughter. It's to
Well,
me, it's not honest.
that is true. Most good musicians are incredibly insecure people. So, like, I've never met like some great musicians who's just like super alpha, confident person. Like, just there's a lot of insecurity because like when you're doing a song like a piece of art is like your art isn't saying in words what you're feeling, it's given visual representations, but then when people listen to your song that have words they assume it's about you,
Hmm.
and that's kind of like judgment. How close do I want to let people come? Because I wrote this one song that was like about this guy, and like at the end it's like he's got a gun and looked into the glass and his heart was black, right? Not a happy dude, but it wasn't about me. It was a story about somebody else. But it's people just assume it's about me. Matt, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I just wrote this like,
I have the same experience though too. You know, if I paint something bloody or gory, my mom is like, I need to take you to the psychiatrist.
right,
If
exactly.
it doesn't matter whether you say it with words or with pictures. If something bothers you, it comes out in a certain way. And what did you do at that moment when people ask you, "Are you okay, Matt?"
Well, I did actually change the lyrics because they were just a little too descriptive because I wanted it to be more representative. Um,
So you
and
started writing for the masses again.
No, no, you're not writing for the masses, but then you're like, okay, is this really like what I'm trying to say? No, I can be a little less overt about it. But when you're writing a song, like you are constantly tweaking until that thing is recorded and it's done. So like that's the whole thing. Is like when you hear a song, you're hearing the final version. You're missing all the changes they did all along the way to come to that result. Yeah, so I guess what I was saying is that like you're creating art, whether you're creating a song or in like anything can go if you make it work. So you can have lyrics that don't really have a story as long as they sound good and they sound interesting and they can give enough metaphors and sonic representations for people to latch on to. That's all that matters because a song is not just about the story or the lyrics. Those are very specific kind of songwriters that do that. Other like you know when you listen to Smashing Pumpkins, right? It's like there's so much symbolic stuff in his lyrics, but you know Billy Corgan's like a perfect example of like the insecure artist. I mean, he's a brilliant musician, but he's also very insecure, and it's hard for him to share certain things. So it's just everybody's different.
I know is most people don't even listen to the lyrics at all. And the music that exports from the US into other countries is being enjoyed by people who don't even understand English. A lot of it is really the vibe of the song, how good it is.
Well, yeah, you're listening to the vibe, which is basically the groove, and whether it's intense or it's chill or whatever, and you're listening vocally to syllables, how they're laid out, and the rhythm and the notes attached to those syllables. That's what we latch onto, and then the words are kind of secondary.
Yeah,
Certain
because if you
musical,
wanted to tell a story, you would be an author, you would write a novel instead of a song.
well, yeah, because like you know, I get a lot of people like, oh, I write poems. Can you make this a song? I'm like, no, this is like a meandering poem. Like, not many poems have like one word repeated four times in a row, or it
Yeah,
goes.
I think Suzanne Vega could pull it off though.
Well, no, you listen to a lot of like you know pop punk. Half the time it's like whoa, whoa. There's just singing that, and it's so catchy and melodic that it works, right? So there's just like all different ways you can do it. But if you're like an acoustic guitar player that sings your own stuff, that's where it's probably more to your advantage to have something you can that people can latch onto because that audience is listening for that kind of stuff.
I am really one of those people who listens to lyrics more than the song melody. My big hero was Paramore when I was 14. I would listen to Slipknot as well, but
Okay.
that was because I had boyfriends that were heavy into metal, so that was how I could, as a teenager, you bond through music. As an adult, I don't even find myself listening to anything anymore because my husband, he doesn't listen to music, so I don't. I
Right.
listen to podcasts now all day long. So
Well,
I
also the
feel
funny, I was told by someone that like once you hit 30 or so, you stop pursuing new music, and that's kind of true. Like
it is. You live in nostalgia.
it's not just that, but there's like only so much time of your life where you're interested in new stuff, and then it's kind of you revert to what you already like. You're like, this is what I like. I've had all these years to figure it out, so I'm not going to like I've had all these years to figure out that I don't like oysters. That's not going to change. I'm not going to one day say, "Oh my God, what have I been missing? These are amazing."
I feel that about mustard though. I my entire life I didn't have anything with mustard, and then in my late 20s I was like, where was this all my life? So it's never too
Well,
late, I guess. But
well,
when you're
that
30 and above, you're not changing anymore.
yeah, exactly. So you got the things you like, and you do what you like.
So what
So
about jazz? You didn't like it in the beginning. How about now?
I mean, it's just, certain kind of music appeals to you. Other like I like stuff that makes me want like
I
I like
want I want to shit on jazz with you. Please tell me honestly
I
why you don't like jazz.
here, I'll I'll show you why. When I'm making fun of jazz, I do this with people. So I play in this mom and dad band with like these really good musicians. Like one guy's Miley Cyrus's musical director, bass player from Silverstone Pickups. We're good musicians, but one the other guitar player is more of jazz background. He was over one day. I'm like, all you have to do is take a dissonance on a chord like this, and they can do this, and all of a sudden that's brilliant. And then all you do I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just taking it, and it always has to have, and then it's just a bunch of nonsense. So when I listen to jazz, to me it sounds like that. It's
Same.
yeah, but the thing is, like, some people love this color and hate, I'm not going to disparage jazz, although I do. It just doesn't appeal to me. I like stuff that rocks. I like listening to blues. I like listening to Albert Collins. I like stuff that makes me want to move. Jazz doesn't make me want to move. For me, it's far too academic. Like when you're playing a rock song and you need to come up with a solo, you're like, hey, it's an A. I know what to play in A. But jazz, the key changes every 2 bars or every half bar. And it's always a bunch of computations so you can find the right notes just so you don't play the right notes and play the wrong notes. But it's a great way to learn theory. Well, the funny thing is like I remember, I got to Neumann and like they gave me Texture One, which was like people just starting out, and then Demo Reel, which is people finishing up. And I talked to my whole class. There were 8 of them. I'm like, "What do you guys want to do?" And they all wanted to be character modelers. And I'm like, "Okay, well, here's how the economics work. Here's how many character modelers are needed, but also understand that it's all fun right now because you're new to it. But after 6 years of doing the same thing, you might get a little bored, or it might start to feel like a job. So." Anything you do eventually does kind of become a job, and it's like levels of how much you love doing it. But I always encourage them, like, maybe get into this and learn some of this stuff, so if you do get bored with that, you're not just stuck. But also, like, visual effects is a very creative field, but it's not, nobody in visual effects is, oh, just go do your thing, we trust you. You're always trying to match something you've been provided. So there's creativity, but more in it's like a cover band compared to an original band, right? So a cover band, you're trying to be accurate to whatever the reference they're giving you is. In an original band, you're like, well, this is just what I felt that day. Don't listen if you don't like it. There's no option for that in, CG art.
It is, as long as you're a student, you can choose how you want your portfolio to look like. But if you
That's
want to get hired, you better put some fan art into it.
Well, yeah, you have to make it look like what they want. So it's not, for somebody like you are a true creative person. You do your own stuff, right? I was not a true visual creative. I would not create my own scenes. I would always draw something that already existed. Like in CG, there's just like not, as an artist, there's not a whole level of, hey, you just do what you feel like doing. Like that It doesn't go like that because you get paid too much and you're getting paid to deliver certain results for a certain someone in a certain way.
I was shocked when I found out what the real CG world looks like. I thought it would be creative, but it's zero creative. It doesn't even have the sea of creativity. The word does not exist in that world. And that's what made me really depressed and
Well, yeah,
eventually
and also I'm not surprised you are veering out into different things because that kind of lifestyle, I don't think you personally would be happy with that long term. Because you,
it didn't work out after 2, 3 years. It didn't. 2 years max.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I always feel bad for Noman students that like spend all that money and spend all that time, and then after a couple of years, they're like, not for me.
Yeah, that was a big one. Because I defined myself like for so long I was an artist and I wanted to work on films. So when I lost my job, it was during the layoff season when Hollywood was striking, you know.
Right. Well, that's when I
It,
went
it
back to guitar. Like,
mm,
because the funny thing is okay, so, I worked in CG for 20 years. I started in 1994. All right, I started,
that's when I was born.
see, there you go. I was already in my 30s. But,
Wait, how old are you now?
I'm not telling you.
Please do.
Oh,
Tell
no.
me. I just
I,
want to see how much older you are than my parents.
I am, I just turned 59.
Okay, you're not that much older.
Is that crazy though?
No.
Well, I never thought I'd be 59. Not when I thought I was 59, I would be much more serious. I'm not. I'm still like a kid in many ways.
Yeah, my father tells me that after 25, men don't change. They stay 25 in their head, and whatever character they had at 25, that's what they're gonna be. Just slower.
I would probably agree with that, you know. But I did it for 20 years. So, I started out, I wasn't in the program at Noman. I just took classes. And, I took classes until some guy hired me. And then I got my friends' jobs. And, for the first 3 years in the industry, I loved it because you're just doing the stuff you were
And it
wanted.
was different. The movies that they created back then, they were worth watching. They were originals.
They were, but like I wasn't even working on movies. I was working on like TV, and I worked on that Mike Judge movie, Idiocracy. That was my first project. But then after a while, you're just kind of like, God. But it's a very stressful job, right? The second someone with ADHD is under like a deadline, it's got to get done. All of a sudden, we're hyper focused.
Mm.
We're going to find a way to get it done. I was often the guy on a project, like, ooh, boom, this is how we're going to do it, right? Now that's great because then people are like, oh my God, Matt, you just save the project, but that's not fun time being that stressed, hyper focused on getting something done. And then, you just realize after a certain point, like all these projects are the same. It's like, oh, cool, I get to lay the sword. Can't wait because you've done it a million times. And just for me, it's just like the stressful nature of it. It was always just stress. And I tend to stress a lot. So if I was on a project that wasn't going perfectly well, I'd be like not sleeping at night, sleep starved during the day, argumentative. And, at one point it was like for maybe the last 8 years of my career, I was trying to find something else to do. And I couldn't. And then, this was like the end of 2022. I got contacted by this studio that they'd known about me for years. I'd known about them. I'd keep in touch. They never tried to book me. All of a sudden, I got contacted by them. And they were like way too eager to get me in. Like, God, like you guys have ignored me for a long time. Now you can't wait to get me in. And this one guy that I was going to be working with, if I took it, was this guy that I didn't get along with very well. And he's like hitting me up on Facebook, dude, you gonna join us? And I'm like, like when somebody's way too eager, tons of red flags, but then you're like, ooh, well, if I do take this gig, it will fill out the rest of my year. So I took the gig, and I shouldn't have taken the gig. And that was just a miserable experience for me. I actually left the gig early because I'm like, fuck this.
What was it like?
It was just, it's like after I'd done that, like when you're young in the industry, you're like, you don't care about the hours. You're like, what is the project? I want to do cool stuff. But once you're doing it for a certain amount of time, like I wasn't single anymore. I had a young kid, I had a wife, I had things I wanted to do other than worry about somebody's deadline. And people would contact me, and the first thing I'd be like, all right, so I hate to ask this, but like, what kind of hours are you going to be working? And I'd just be really clear, this is what I can offer you. It was just not a good
It
situation.
sounds like a very small project, no?
It was a small project, but there were a lot of people on it, and we had like, God,
Ah, okay.
our daily sessions were like 3 hours long. It was insane. So
I
I
hate
was,
dailies.
yeah, I mean, dailies are fine, but when they
Waste of
extend
time.
way too long, it's kind of a waste of time.
Also because they make you watch other people's dailies. And I'm like, so you're paying me for like 3 hours literally to sit in dailies to watch other people get for the 50th time in a month get the same comments and notes. What for? Like leave me call me when it's my turn. Call me 5 minutes before it's my turn.
Yeah, so it was just like not a fun experience, and like I was kind of damaged after that. But then this other company called me in the beginning of 2023, and that was fine. And then the strikes happened. I'm like, ooh, what am I going to do? And then my wife Amy was like, why don't you start teaching guitar again? And I like,
Wait. You were not with Noman anymore, right? Like you left
no,
Noman.
I was with Noman from 2015 to April 2017. I was just there for like 2 years. I really loved working with all the students. They were great. And being their mentor, getting to know them, teaching them like some of the work that was coming on in my class was great. I'd love to stay in touch with them, help them get jobs going down. But also, part of you is like, if you're just teaching and you're no longer doing, that kind of was a bit of a problem. Like, it had a much better lifestyle than working in CG because the hours were fairly normal. But like you work at certain places and the work culture isn't kind of what you would like it to be. And I just found myself battling people a lot there. Some of that's because of my personality. I tend to be someone wants to go, I'm going to go, right? What happened was they had hired me to help develop that BFA program under the assumption that because I had a 4-year degree that I would be able to teach it. That turned out not to be the case. It had to be a 4-year degree that was aligned to the topic you teach. So I graduated with international relations as my major. So it wasn't an art major. So we had found out that I couldn't even teach the program I helped design. There was no reason for me to be there at that point. And I got to meet people like you. I still keep in touch with many of my students. And over the years, I would always bring them in for interviews on whatever project because I knew I could trust them because I'd worked with them. Students they kick out are very good. They're better than most schools. Because they've been taught by people like myself that teach them how to get through a project, like what the important things are. So I had gone back to freelance in 2017, and then COVID hit. I was doing CG, but not at a CG company. But then COVID hit, everything fell apart, and then I truly felt the strikes were going to be kind of the end of the industry as we knew it for a few reasons.
Tell me.
Well, one was they just completely overspent during COVID, just all these shows. The other thing was that when the writers and who else went on strike? Writers and actors, they went on strike at the time where the studios were like, we don't want to spend as much money. So it's like, if you're going to go on strike and you're going to withhold your labor, you better be damn sure that there's a high demand for your labor. But there was not. So the studios were like, oh, cool, we can cut all these people off our books. We don't care if this goes on for a year because we're so in over our heads, overspending. I just didn't see that turning out well. It hasn't. This is before AI even happened. So when the strikes, it was like kind of like, hey, Amy was like, why don't you start teaching guitar again? And I'm like, I hadn't even thought of it. I hadn't taught in many years. I mean, I teach friends here and there, and I've always been staying up on my skills and practicing. It's still my first love, but it wasn't like I could jump in and say, yeah, I'm teaching. I had to create this web page that was like an illusion of me kind of doing it now. It took about a year to get a group of students that are consistent. So I have anywhere between 20 to 30 students per week now. But what I like about it is I don't have to touch base with any producers about anything I do. If I see a holiday coming down the pipe, I just tell my students I'm not going to be there. I don't have to get that approved. I don't have to worry about just, the the life of a CG artist. Usually on Thursday, you start seeing like, hey, what are you up to this weekend? You know, and I was just over it. Like when I
Yeah.
was younger, I'm like, yeah, sure. But I don't like working weekends. I don't like not seeing my son's soccer games
Yeah.
because of some project. And for me, it was a good time to do something different. So that's what I'm doing now. And it's become like my new passion. I think a lot about how I'm teaching, how my students are progressing. And I have different approaches than many who teach guitar. It's not your typical approach where you sign up and they give you the stuff that they give everybody else, because I have different insight. So yeah, it's been fun. It's just like, your students are cool, they like you, you're not no producers. Did I
I
say
have a
that?
feeling that you love people. You love people. You love hanging out with people. You love getting to know them at a personal level and vibing with them. And that's what makes you a popular teacher. It makes you approachable.
Well, yeah, like at Noman, it's like, we're studying difficult stuff, but you can make that stuff unenjoyable or you can make it enjoyable. I'm like, okay, well, we're all adults in this room. I may as well use my sense of humor to keep this a little more fun because that's what I'm always going to do that anyway, right? It was fast paced, my class. Like I went quickly, but I would always try to break it up. And I like getting to know the people because I met so many awesome people as my students that I still stay in touch with, people like you and other people. There's also some people that I don't stay in touch with, which is totally fine. But I generally do like hanging out with people and getting to know them and, seeing what makes them click. And when you're teaching, like not everybody picks things up or understands things in the same way. Meaning when I'm teaching strumming to one person, I have to teach it one way. Somebody else I have to teach it differently. It's a matter of finding out how somebody can understand that with the brain and the talent they were born with.
Do you feel like there's a difficulty between in person and Zoom?
In person is always the best from a learning aspect because when I'm here with a student, they have a tube amp to play for, a nice pedal board, I have a drum machine, I have everything going. Like I don't just sit there and show them stuff. I will turn on a drum machine, jam out with the drum machine, make sure you can play rhythm well, right? Or I'll pull out the bass, I'll jam along with them, or turn on a Tom Petty song and play along with the song. That is one aspect with Zoom that's not there. On Zoom, there is a delay, so you can't play together live. But, what I do is I send them a backing track and I'm like, let me hear you play over this. I make comments and I give them examples. I spend a lot of time having them video record me so they don't forget. So, it was kind of like my handouts, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, you're going to forget that here. Just pull it out. I demonstrate it. I have a lot of students that I've taught as beginners or more advanced students. For example, there's this one guy, Bill. I've known him since high school. He is a very good guitar player. He's got a great feel. He's super musical. He just doesn't know anything about theory. So I've been teaching him theory and how it can improve his playing because it's hard to be a good artist if you don't understand how color theory works, right? Some of the people I've known before, most of the people are new people I meet, but you meet all kinds of cool people. And it's fun because there's no producers involved.
I totally get you.
It's funny because you will experience this as a parent. You just had a son. You're going to wonder if he has your artistic talent.
I'm hoping he does not.
Why?
It's so hard for me to make money, even though I'm the most talented person I know. And I'm not saying that because I'm so into myself or I'm arrogant. I just don't know anyone who can pick up anything that fast as I do. But I can't stick with anything for longer than a year. And now I'm in the pursuit of making that my brand, right? Like Tiana, the artist, Tiana, the multidisciplinary artist, right? But it took a long time to make peace with that because usually any artist is being told to niche down. Like even if you're a guitarist, like you said, you're into jazz or you're into the academic thing that only gets you in an orchestra, or you are going to be in a band or you're going to play only at weddings. But even as a painter, you are a wedding painter, a portrait painter, God knows what kind of painter. And that it just doesn't work for me. So what me and my husband are saying is that no matter what he's going to be into, we want to teach him how to sell anything that he wants to do. So at 7 years old, he has to have his first business. And think lemonade stand, that is a business. Think cleaning windows, that is a business. Like it to us, it doesn't matter what he does. We don't want him employed. That's the most important thing. We want him to speak all the four languages that we have between us, plus Chinese would be amazing. So we speak French, German, English, and Croatian. He has to be fluent in each and every single one of them. And we want him to learn Chinese. We want him to be able to pursue anything that he wants full on, but also be able to sell it either as a service or a product in
Right.
his own environment. So if he likes to sculpt, like his mom currently likes to sculpt with polymer clay, wouldn't it be cool if he can make 10 of the same and see if he can sell it to a friend of his for the cost of the material and the time that it took? And even if his time costs $1 and it took him 5 hours to make it, he'll charge 5 hours plus the material cost. We want him to learn these things very early on and constantly think about whatever he's interested in, how can I monetize this? And if he doesn't stick with the same thing, which no one ever will these days, people change careers at least 3 times in their lifetime minimum. At
Yeah.
least he will always know that he can learn how to fish and he can sell the goddamn fish.
Right. Well, no, you're talking about your son, right?
Yes, and
Yeah.
even ourselves now, like I'm trying to rule by example. I'm learning how to turn my inability to focus on something into a product itself. And now I'm learning how to package it and
Right.
I'm trying to find the clients for it or the audience for it. All of these things, it takes time, but I'm constantly in the pursuit of learning how to monetize whatever I like to do.
Well, that's great. Well, keep in mind that you still will one day see him draw something and you might say, holy shit. But then you can guide him towards making money on it, right?
I mean, that would be cool, but I'm just scared. I'm really scared for him because I know how hard it is as an artist.
Oh, no, of course. Look, I'm not like, okay, so my son, he's 10 years old now, right? So I didn't start playing until I was 14. I know what it would have meant for me if I started when I was 7. I would have started high school as probably one of the best players in the school as a freshman, but I was a beginner. I just know what playing guitar and music did for me, which means well, I wasn't unpopular in high school, but I wasn't like the most popular person. But when you're in the most popular band, people know you, and there's a certain coolness about that. Some girls would be interested in me that wouldn't normally be interested in me because I played guitar well. And it's fun, and it's a good way to express creativity. So knowing that, every kid gets a ukulele. So with him, it was like, holding it wrong. I was just slowly tricking him into playing guitar. So nothing with the left hand. It was all strumming, holding it. And then when he was in first grade, I sent him some guitar lessons, and he came back. I'm like, "What'd you learn?" And he's like, E minor, and he like just played it perfectly first time. And at that point I'd already taught over 10,000 hours to many kids that age, and they don't remember that chord or play it perfectly after being shown
That's the
once.
two fingers chord, right? Up
Yeah,
there. Right.
it's this. It's like,
Yeah.
like that. And like usually kids, it's like, no, wrong string still.
Okay.
But he just did it so calm. He was just like,
So you knew he has your
easy.
talent because you know from experience the children don't pick it up that easily.
Well, yeah, because I was like, whoa. Half the time you're like, am I seeing what I want to see, or am I seeing what's really there? So I showed it to another musical friend. He's like, yeah, no, dude, that was sick. So, but then, he was in guitar lessons at this place for like 4 months. He didn't learn anything else because he was too young. It was like a goof off session. So I pulled him out of that, and then I just think it's important to learn how to play a musical instrument. And in many ways, it teaches kids, especially my son, how to overcome frustration
Hmm.
because it's not easy. You're going to be frustrated in school throughout your whole life, and just being able to suck at something and then work at it and then be good at it, that builds a lot of confidence.
Especially if you watch your parents go through that too. I learned the piano at 7, And I was in a school band too. I was the singer and I was a the pianist. I
Okay.
also learned by myself just the simple chords on the guitar, like the four major ones. I
Yeah.
learned how to put a capo on if I didn't know the others. And I also then started to learn the violin. And I went into a music school, so I learned the theories and stuff. And that helped my brain be primed for all the other arts as well. Like I love to compare music with visual arts because there's just so many, like you say, color theory to what notes go
Yeah.
well together. That's color theory. Like
Yeah. Essentially,
that
it's a science.
Yes, and that's why people have synesthesia. Like there's a direct correlation, and it's amazing. And I spent hours and hours and hours not only playing, covers and stuff, but I also when I started having my first heartbreaks, I started writing my own songs.
Yeah.
I want that for my son. And the thing is, I my husband bought me a piano. I don't touch it anymore. I'm scared of the goddamn piano because I don't play the same way I used to. I don't have the same ease at it and the frustration, like you said, I don't have the patience for it anymore. And I want to start again and I want my son to watch me be hella frustrated with myself and fail at it, but still go back to it. I want him to learn that it's not everything's not easy from the get-go. You have to try and you have to fail and you have to earn that win. And it's going to be the biggest win for you, and only you might hear the difference sometimes.
Well, yeah, and the whole thing is the funny thing is like so he didn't learn anything for that period of time, and then he didn't touch a guitar for like 3 years. And we were at like a family friend's house. He had a guitar I was playing, and Bowie, my son, he's like, "Can I try it?" I'm like, yeah, knock yourself out. So I handed it to him. He didn't remember anything. I showed him the E minor chord, and then he figured out a B7 chord by ear on his own. Because like you notice certain kind of people approach things a certain way. So usually I show a finger exercise at one tempo. It never even occurs to the students to play it faster or to try to take a chord I show and what happens if I change a note to sound good or bad. But Bowie, just ever since I've seen him do it, it's like that day he figured out B7 and we were showing stuff to him where it's like kind of like, whoa, this is not normal. And at that moment, I was like, okay, he's definitely got my talent, possibly more. But he's doesn't have my work ethic. I was a grinder. That's all I did.
Do you
I have
think it's a generational thing? Like,
Well,
do
it's
you?
a couple things. One is that like there were no musicians in my immediate family, so there's a barrier of entry, right?
Okay.
I have no proof that anyone in my family that that's what we do. So for me to do it, I had to work hard. For Bowie, he sees me playing all day. He's got like amazing guitars to play if he wants to play them. There's no barrier. There's no like, oh, that's what other people do because he sees me do it, right? But then also, he doesn't see all the work that I had to put in to get there. And he's young and he's immature, and kids don't really work at anything these days. I got him his own teacher because like our little sessions, because I started teaching him at that point, and
Did
when
he
you're
ask for the teacher?
no, he was into it. He wanted to be good, and I'm here. That's what I do. I could show him stuff, which I did, but like some of our sessions would turn into him
Arguments?
saying, yeah, like, okay, cool, Bowie. Well, that was like 10% effort. Here's the deal. You're not leaving this chair until you do this thing 4 times in a row perfectly. I don't care if I have to keep you up until 1 a.m. because I know you can do it. And then he does it immediately because he had an incentive. I got him a teacher because I'm like, this is not a bad vibe. And I'm like, oh, he'll be the drill sergeant. I'll be the fun guy, but I'm still the drill sergeant. Now he's the fun guy, which is great because he loves his teacher. He loves going there. He's gotten so much better. But like anything that I feel like I can see his talent, right? I can see he can be pushed much faster into more difficult things than your typical kid. So I will push him into those things. So maybe like 2 weeks ago, I'm like, okay, I'm going to show a 1 octave pentatonic scale, right? So you got to switch strings. He gets super frustrated. He's like, oh, I'm the worst guitar player ever. He's freaking the fuck out. I'm like, dude, nobody just picks this up and runs with it. You got to be able to do it slow. And he's like, I don't want to be a slowpoke. And when I watch him play, he's one of the few kids I've worked with that are like, oh, I want to try it faster. I want to try it as fast as I possibly can. I show him a G chord, he immediately starts moving his fingers out around until he finds something else. So that's a much higher level of intuitive musicianship than like your average Joe.
And at the same time, when you try to play something fast, and that's how you practice, you learn the mistakes, you integrate the
Yeah,
mistakes.
you're learning how to be fast and sloppy. Now that Jimmy Page made a career out of that, right? But that's not typical. So I showed him this scale, and it was like just pulling teeth. It was absolute miserable experience. But the funny thing is, I do teach his friend and classmate Landon, who's just starting out. Landon was over, Bowie's already home. I'm like, hey, Bowie, come in and jam with us. So we were playing E minor to G, like I do with beginners. And then guess who just busted into that pentatonic scale like he'd been doing it his whole life when he had an opportunity to show my son. And then he's like, no, Landon, here, try this, try that, do it. Then he was teaching him everything I've told him that he ignores in me, telling his friend to do it. So it was pretty cute. It was like, every now and then I'm like, see, this is why you practice, because then people are like, oh, wow, he's really good, right? So then I had another session with him like last week. It was more pulling teeth. And then the next day, he wants to get together with some of his baseball teammates and do some jamming. There's a drummer and a keyboard player. I'm like, well, you're going to have to play a song for longer than 2 seconds, right? So I turned on a drum machine. I taught him that zombie song, that Cranberry song, Zombie. And he had all the pedals going, and he started soloing, and I was watching him. At first, it was like, and I got the whole thing on video. It's pretty crazy. At first, he was full on ADHD, not even listening to the beat. You just hear me say, pay attention to the beat, and all of a sudden, he gets into the zone. And he was figuring stuff out by ear that was like really sophisticated, like good use of dissonant notes. Not usually when a kid hits a dissonant note, they can hear it's dissonant. Every dissonant note has a use, but he leaned into it. And I was like, wow, that's fucking crazy. And like by the end of this, it was like a 3-minute thing. I was like, holy shit.
Can you walk me through, like with your guitar, what that sounded like his beginning and then getting into the zone?
I mean,
Can
if
you
you want,
replicate that?
I have it on tape. I can show you the whole thing. It's like 3 minutes
Please,
long.
I would
Okay.
love to see that.
Okay, so there's a drum machine going. I'm playing rhythm guitar. I had a camera on a music stand. So this is how it started. I just started playing along, and you're going to notice at the beginning he's not paying attention to the beat at all. That's how he normally plays because he's just so impatient. So I told him to stay with the beat. Now he's with the beat. Now, right here, I did not show him that. That's called a double stop. That people well, he's playing 2 notes at the same time and putting another one down. It's like what John Mayer does a lot, or Jimi Hendrix.
Okay.
I didn't show him that. He figured that out on his own. And then but it's starting to get in a groove. You know, that's a bad note. All kids hit bad note. But that note right there, that is a flatted fifth. That is a more advanced note that like blues players use. So, but this note right here. So now he's starting to get in the groove. You see how he's moving around?
Yeah.
Half the time he's not looking at his hands. He's just looking around the room. Like I never did that. So that's the scale I showed him. But you see, he's not looking at his fingers. So now he's figuring something out. He's looking for notes that I didn't show him. That right there. That's pretty sophisticated. That's dissonance being used correctly. So I'm trying to get him to resolve it, bend it up. And you see the body language on his bends looks like a guitar player, like that. Like that. Like I didn't show him any of these notes. He's just trying to find them. That right there, back to that dissonance. No kid's gonna say that's the right note. So anyway, like he has no idea that how difficult that is, what he just did. So he was like playing all these dissonant notes, like that's sophisticated ear. So usually people listen to something, they're like, oh, major scale, right? Nobody's like, oh, that's right. But that's what he was doing. He was doing like these kind of intervals to that, to this kind of stuff, and making it work. Most people hear that, they'll hear this chord and they're like, oh, wrong, right? But people did not, but he was like, oh, it's right. So that was like kind of like, it's just every now and then with him, I'll have like this holy shit moment where like, wow, that was pretty impressive. So it's like, he's like top tier talent, bottom tier work ethic. Maybe that'll change, maybe it won't. It's funny because we had a family over for a football game, and one of the girls is like, his classmate. If there could be like the cute, popular fourth grade girl, she's it. And she and her sister were there. He started playing guitar. Pretty soon they were both sitting in front of him watching him play. And I'm like, see, dude, like, good, they come to you.
It's working.
Why wouldn't you want that, right? So, but it's been a lot of fun. But it's also, I've had to have a lot of self-control because I see that talent in him and I want to push him to be great, but I don't want to turn him off. There have been moments where I crossed the line too much and I got to back off. But as long as he's having those moments, because he was so psyched after that. And I'm like, was it worth it, the misery I put you through? Because you would never have been able to do that if I didn't do it. He's like, yeah, totally. I'm like, that's how it works. You have to suck. Then you're good. Few things feel better than being good after you've sucked, after you've worked at it, right? And that will apply to school. That'll apply to sports. That'll apply to anything you do, right? I've noticed a lot of kids these days, they have their devices and they don't strive to achieve much other than that. There's your outliers, like kid
It's
on his.
very hard. I think that these devices, they're, in many ways stronger than us. Like I fight my own scrolling addiction every single day. And thankfully I just stuff my schedule up so much that there's very little time for that. But I catch myself, and if we as adults have such a hard time staying off of them, for children, this is absolute crack. Crack cocaine, heroin,
Yeah.
fentanyl, all in one.
Well, yeah, okay. Also, like, I have ADHD, my wife has ADHD, and my son has ADHD. Nothing gives you more dopamine than looking at your freaking phone, right? So people with ADHD have low dopamine, so they seek things that give them dopamine. So when you're scrolling or you are playing a video game and that's like giving a sugar addict a bowl of sugar. So yeah, we have to pull him away from his devices. But then again, my wife and I are both on our phones. It's kind of evil,
Yeah,
but
they
you know,
learn it from us and they do what we do. If we were reading all day long, they would probably be picking up a book more often.
yeah,
The way it
so
is.
like
And I think that he's learning through you too. Like even if you're not teaching him, like you said, be in the car and listen to a song the way a musician listens to a song, not like a consumer listens to a song. You're working, you're learning. And I think your son, by osmosis, is picking up on a lot of things. And maybe he doesn't have the words for them, maybe he doesn't understand the theory of it, but he feels that this is the correct way to hear a song and to play it.
well, yeah, and also the thing is like the funny thing is like he had never tuned before. So anyone who's tuned a guitar, you can at one point I can play this out of tuning string with this B string, and I can tune it up until it's in tune, right? And
Mm.
he's like, "Oh, I want to try." I got plenty of talent. It took me 2 months before I could tune my guitar. So I gave him this knob, and he did this. He just like in a straight line until it was in tune, and then stopped. Didn't even look it to me and say, "Is that right, Dad?" He just knew.
Yeah.
Which is now he's probably heard me do that 100,000 times,
Mm.
so he knows what it sounds like. But then that doesn't mean that you can do it yourself. So it's just you get these little things along the way that like, okay, he could be really good if he wants to be. And that I've told him like, Bowie, if the first time I saw you try to make a basket with you nailed a 24 3-point shot, it would be parental malpractice for me not to help you develop that, right? Because
Yeah.
that's only going to make your life better. So that's the way I look at this. We'll see where he wants to go in life. But there is a lot to be said because he's going to be going to middle school, and then they got this rock band thing after school. If you can get to school and you're known as like a good musician, that's how you meet friends. It's usually either the art people, the theater people, sport people.
Are you not worried at all about his income?
No, because he's just learning a skill. It's like,
It's a later problem, the income.
well, I mean, the not the amount of people who learn guitar as a kid that end up wanting to play professionally is small. I'm not worried about his income at all because the chances are he's probably not going to do this professionally. Maybe he will, maybe he won't, but like me, it's like you can always say, "Hey, there's not the income," then change to something else.
But
But
have you already set him up on like a routine in which he can like earn pocket money or something just to give him a feeling
yeah,
for
every time we've tried that, it hasn't worked out. It because my wife and I are also like not super great at sticking with that. We're a family of ADHD people. So, but like now it's like he has this guy that comes over and teaches him drums, who's just been a jam teacher now. So it's mostly guitar. So he gets that in practice. I make him practice 15 minutes twice a week, which is pretty reasonable. Then he's got his guitar lesson. So that's been enough to get him to make huge gains in his guitar playing. And he's still very young. When I was fourth grade, I wasn't really working that hard at anything, but I did notice that when I went to this thing called the Battle of the Bands my freshman year in high school, I'm like, oh, all those guys playing in those bands, those guys are fucking cool, and everybody knows who they are. Everybody thinks they're cool. That looks like fun, right? And that's not the thing. Is like with things like sports, anybody can play soccer if you can kick and run, right? Doesn't mean you're going to be good, but the percentage of people that are good at athletics, meaning average or better, is much higher than the people that are good at art or music. It's just a smaller group of people that are actually cut out to do that. When you can do something like that, you're doing something that there's a certain prerequisite amount of skill and talent to play an instrument and sound good. Like some sports are so simple, like you play soccer. If you can kick and you can run, you can play soccer. That's how it works because sports are based on mechanics that we do every day, walking, grabbing things, right? Whereas music involves all these other parts of the brain. But one thing I will say is I've never met somebody who draws or does visual art really well who tries music and wasn't good. And most of my friends who are good musicians, they can also draw really well, whether they've studied it or not. So I'm convinced it's the same part of the brain.
without a
Yeah.
doubt.
Because I'm not surprised that you were writing your own songs and you were able to do that stuff because just talent will manifest itself in certain ways that might be different, but that talent underlying is the same thing. So you could have like hydrogen and oxygen, and it might manifest as water, or it could just be separate hydrogen and oxygen. It just requires some kind of reaction to make it what it is.
I
So,
love that. It's a
well,
chemical effect.
yeah, well, it's like, like anything, but then there's like discipline. Like all I did was practice guitar from the second I started, but I was also older and more focused. So we will see. But like, anybody who's really good. Did you know anybody in Noman that was super talented who didn't work at it who got good? Probably not.
No, yeah, no, the competition was too high. They didn't allow it. Like the workload was so high. If you don't work, you flunk out.
Yeah.
You have to. There is no, and you put so much money down. Like you're either your family or you go into debt. Like the program is literally foolproof. The only reason why people may not be able to get placed is a geographical location.
Yeah. Like almost all my Noman students got jobs, and
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
majority of them have surpassed
I
me, and I'm so
I was
happy to see that.
unemployed after Nomen because I was in Europe. Like I was in Austria. There is no jobs in that field. So then
Right.
the COVID hit and somehow I got into the industry by accident. I was streaming painting tarot cards on Twitch and
I
I had
remember
no
that.
job and then suddenly people were finding out that I was complaining about the price of rice because I lived somewhere in a really shitty commune in
Right.
Valencia of all places. And I was working my ass off. And that month I made more money than ever because the universe had my back. Like I worked with a director that worked on Bridgerton. I did some stuff for her and I did other freelance gigs. And then someone reached out and he said, "Hey, we have work in Montreal if you want to do digital matte painting." And I'm like, "Just get me out of here." And that's how I ended up in Canada. It was so amazing to talk to you.
It was
And
awesome seeing you, and it was like anytime somebody lets me just speak my mind, I'm always down for that.
you you can call me whenever. I'm always at home.
Well, there you go. New mom, right?
I swear it's the best. You make me want to play music again, and that is, I think, amazing.
Well, you
It's
should. I think I've told you before that you should because you're very talented in that department.
Thank you.